Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the LSU Sports Insider. I'm Wilson Alexander, LSU football beat writer here at The Advocate and Times-Picayune, joined today by my colleague, Reed Darcey. Reed and I were out at LSU's first preseason practice, sweating through our clothes completely.
Getting sunburnt.
We have dried out now, and we're back in the podcast studio. Reed, at one point, flipped up his collar, I can only assume, to avoid getting scorched.
I was trying to protect my neck.
Yeah.
You know, the neck, it's a bad place to burn, so I was trying to hide it from the sun a little bit, but the rest of me got burned, so it just didn't really amount to much.
We got to, I guess, increase the SPF on the sunscreen moving forward. Going to be a lot of open practices here, especially over the first 2 weeks of preseason camp. LSU's opening things up, 4 or 5 times next week. Same thing the week after that. So we're going to have a lot of observations and takeaways about this team going into the 2024 season for y'all. Here today, we're just going to break down what we learned on the first day. There was some, I think, takeaways that we could have, at least initially, on the cornerback room and some different things in the secondary, some young players who made some impressive plays, and a lot more from at least everything we could get out of an unpadded practice. But first, a little bit of business. You can find us this podcast over at the LSU Tigers on NOLA.com on YouTube, or on Apple, Spotify, or as our former sports editor Perrin Keys like to say, wherever other finer podcasts are found. Perrin, who is now in Buffalo, where he said he went to run along Niagara Falls the other day, and it was like 56 degrees. Today it was closer to like 95 down at the Ponderosa.
We'll get him back in the wintertime.
Yeah, we'll see how he's doing in February. Yeah. You can also check out all of our work over at theadvocate.com. Make sure you subscribe over there for either the print edition, online, both. And make sure for this podcast, like and subscribe and share it with all your friends.
Football fans, with the Caesars Sportsbook app, you can be in the game all the time. Seeking instant action? Quick Picks offers you the most popular games and markets already built for you and ready to bet. Experience the thrill when you stack your bets to create a super parlay. Build bets for your favorite teams and players across multiple games. This season, don't just watch the game. Download Caesars Sportsbook and experience the game like never before.
We're going to have tons of coverage for y'all on LSU football all throughout this fascinating 2024 season. Expanded playoff, expanded SEC, Brian Kelly year 3, lots going on. Let's dig into the first day here, Reed. Just a sort of broad overview of day one. What did you kind of take away from it?
So the first thing that jumped out to me was where Sage Ryan was playing on the field. We got out there and he was lined up as one of the first team corners. And that was a bit of a surprise because in the spring, he was primarily a safety. And if you think back to when he first enrolled at LSU, when he was a freshman and when he was a recruit, he was a 5-star safety recruit. And that's really where he started his career. And since then, he's gone, he's played safety. He's played a lot of nickel as well. And last year, even played outside corner because there were so many injuries and so many problems, with the corners last year. So in the spring, Brian Kelly, his defense, they said, hey, we're moving Sage back to safety. But we go out there today and he's playing corner, and so we asked Brian Kelly about it, and he said, hey, we're cross training him. We're gonna want him to be able to play both spots, both safety and corner, so LSU can have some more versatility in the back end. So that was the first thing that jumped out to me. He was lined up opposite Ashton Stamps. He was the other first team corner, and then the 2 safeties were Jordan Allen, the sophomore, and refresh my memory. Sorry.
Talking about second team safeties?
No, the first team safeties.
Oh, first team safeties. Jordan Allen and Jordan Gilbert.
Yes, and then Major Burns was the star, the sort of hybrid nickel kind of linebacker position. So the secondary is going to keep moving around, but that was the first thing that I noticed today. Wilson, what about you?
Well, for me, what was jumped out was within that secondary, the reps were just much more competitive than they were on this first practice a year ago. Last year, we go out to the first practice, and you never want to make too much of day one. And even today, don't make too much of everything that we're saying, because this is, again, no pads on, they're acclimating, all that kind of stuff. But that first day last year, LSU's corners and safeties were just getting burned every single rep, especially in one-on-ones where LSU's pass catchers, and obviously it was a very talented group of pass catchers, especially with Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas, but when they had space, an open space to work, they were just exploiting it. And you didn't see that as much today. I felt like LSU's corners in particular were doing a better job of staying on the hip. of the receivers especially on certain go balls. And when they were kind of doing some, I guess not quite 7-on-7 work. I guess it was 7-on-7 work.
7-on-7,
yeah. Ashton Stamps had a nice interception along the sideline. PJ Woodland had a pick and another pass deflection. And it just felt like they were in on the play a lot more often. They still got beat at times. Shelton Sampson made this great high-pointed catch, went up to get the ball over P.J. Woodland early in practice. Later on, Kyron Lacey goes up and beats freshman Michael Turner on another jump ball, 50-50 ball. So it wasn't like it was all of a sudden perfect and they're going to be lockdown corners. But while playing man coverage, which LSU really struggled to do last year and really pretty much played zone all the time because man wasn't probably going to work. They want to be a man coverage team, and they were much more competitive on their reps today, which I liked. But you said something when we did our preview podcast just the other day, kind of looking at preseason camp, that you would have liked to have seen. The thing that would have given you confidence is LSU bringing out a cornerback group, whoever was first team, that first team sort of staying throughout practice. Don't think that's going to happen.
I don't think so either. When I said that, I said, hey, if we do see that, then that would give me confidence. I wasn't expecting to see that at all. We saw Ashton Stamps and Sage Ryan in those spots today. The second team was J.K. Johnson and P.J. Woodland. So LSU will probably, if I'm expecting things here, LSU will probably put maybe two different corners tomorrow morning when they go out to practice. So it's probably going to change. It's probably going to move around a lot. We saw Zai Alexander out there today, but he didn't do a whole lot of work because he's recovering from that ACL tear, and the LSU kind of wants to ease him along. He's probably going to be one of the starters, and he'll probably be ready for the opener based on the early indications out of camp. So he'll probably be one of the spots. Now, what's going to happen to Sage Ryan if they move him back to safety? Who's going to take that other spot? Is it going to be Ashton Stamps? Is it going to be J.K. Johnson? Is it going to be Jair Brown, maybe the transfer from Ohio State? So there's still a lot of uncertainties, a long way to go, relatively speaking, until the season opener. But again, like you said, what's encouraging is how active and how competitive they looked today, especially playing man coverage. And if we can see that activity throughout the rest of the camp, then I think that's another thing that can help you build confidence in the secondary.
And another name that we haven't mentioned yet, the big news of the day was that Javian Toiano was actually at practice. And this came as a surprise because Toiano was suspended only just back on July 21st after an arrest over accusations of video voyeurism. And Brian Kelly said that Toiano has been reinstated by the university. And so he was back on the practice field today. Didn't do much of anything. Toiano was, at least he was out there, similar to Zai Alexander, on the field in his jersey,
dressed out,
but didn't actually do much at practice. And Brian Kelly, though, said that he's going to be someone who's in the mix. I mean, Toiano started 3 of the last 5 games that he played as a freshman at cornerback. He is someone who can play nickel as well. He's got some length that maybe would make him an interesting possibility at that spot, but also be back in the mix at cornerback. And it's interesting, Kelly said that they're going to kind of get him back into things as he's continuing to go through his legal process. And so, that's still something that is, I guess, going on, for lack of a better word, with Javian Toiano. But at least on the university side, he has been reinstated, and so he's back with the team, and he will be in the mix there as well. I'm not so certain as you are, maybe that like a probability that Zai Alexander will start week 1. He still has a big brace on his knee. Brian Kelly said he's full go, but it's kind of a matter of when you're coming off these injuries, especially like a knee, you got to get more comfortable on it again. And, Zai, that might take a little bit, which is perfectly understandable. I mean, he tore his ACL last October, but we'll see exactly how he factors into the cornerback competition as we move forward, how Toiano does as well. And like you said, all these other guys, I think I'm really fascinated to see if P.J. Woodland can make a push for one of those spots. Yeah. Because he had a great spring as a true freshman. He's put on some weight. And like we started earlier, he made some really competitive plays today. But you're seeing this, I think, from a lot of LSU's young players. And Kelly said it himself, too. Very next play, he got beat over the top. Right. He was the one in coverage, like I mentioned, on Shelton Sampson's great catch. And so that's kind of like what you're seeing out of these cornerbacks right now, I think, and kind of what we saw some of in the spring. Competition, making some plays here and there, still getting beat at times. Either way, LSU needs to get a lot better in the secondary after giving up 255.6 yards per game passing last year. And
That's what Brian Kelly said. There's a lot of young guys in the room, and for the young guys like PJ Woodland and Ashton Stamps and Toiano, once he starts to get more in the mix, he wants to see consistency from them, and that's when he knows that maybe he can trust them more. It's one thing to make a couple nice plays, highlight reel plays like Ashton Stamps. He made a really, really cool interception where he was sort of in zone coverage and then floated over the top and just jumped and dove to pick off the pass from Garrett Nussmeier. And so that was a really impressive flash. But again, he also got an earful from Corey Raymond at times, just for little minor mistakes he made, even on the next rep. So Brian Kelly and the rest of the staff, they're looking for that consistency from the young guys. And if they get it, then that means they trust them going forward, and you could see them in the lineup week to week.
Ashton Stamps, who's now wearing number 1.
Yes.
A good number on a corner.
Yeah.
And like you said, the very next play after the interception, Corey Raymond didn't like what he saw and told Stamps that he would have to run after practice. So that's what you get early in camp.
Yeah, of course.
Pivoting a little bit here, Zy Alexander, as we mentioned, coming off the knee injury. LSU's got another player coming off an ACL injury, John Emery, now wearing number 22. There was a bunch of LSU number changes that went on right before camp. And Emery, who, because he was no longer on the team in the spring, not just like he entered the portal and then came back to LSU, like he was not on the team in the spring. CJ Daniels gets number 4, which Emery was used to wear. Emery ends up originally on the LSU roster as 44. Then today he's in number 22. But Emery was doing a lot out there. And what do you make of kind of him and maybe some of LSU's usage of the running backs here? It's early, a lot of rotation and all that kind of thing. But I think we saw more of him than I expected to see.
Yeah, today. I did too. And he looked good. He looked spry. He looked fast. LSU really made a point. I think whatever they were working on today, they were working out getting the running backs out of the backfield, running routes, shallow routes, little wheel routes, and trying to get them the ball in space. We saw Caleb Jackson and Josh Williams sort of rotate with that first team, pretty much what we expected. Brian Kelly said that they're really going to take it easy on Josh Williams, in the preseason camp because they know what they're going to get from him. They know, he'll show up on Saturday ready to play, really no matter how many reps he gets in the preseason. So LSU's managing his reps. Caleb Jackson, on the other hand, he could use the camp as an opportunity to show the LSU coaching staff what he can do and how much he's improved, what strides he's made since his freshman year when he really struggled as a pass catcher, struggled as a pass protector. So he's got an opportunity to show some things as LSU manages Josh Williams' reps. But for John Emery, I think he looked good. He got some run with the second team offense. He caught some passes out the backfield, and he looked like he usually does. He's not that far removed from the ACL, so it's kind of surprising to see him moving so well. But it's really kind of interesting how his path has sort of led him here. He's the only player, I believe, from the 2019 team. He's the only national championship player left on the roster from that team.
Williams would have been too.
Josh Williams. Williams to walk on though. Right? Yeah. So he's the only, I guess, contributor left from that team. So he's had a fascinating journey, and he's back for another year.
I know, and you sort of had this contrast going on of like Zy Alexander not doing anything, and then John Emery, like you said, like putting his foot in the ground and cutting and accelerating upfield. And LSU's probably going to need him at times this year. It's going to be really interesting to see exactly how the running back sort of workload gets divvied up as we go through the season. I don't think it's vital that LSU has like a clear-cut RB1 leader of the way, but they definitely need to be able to probably get contributions from a number of guys, and Emery being one of them. I mean, he's one of the 4 scholarship guys available right now. Trey Holly wasn't out there. He's still suspended. And so, I think it was good to see that and gave me some confidence in maybe what the position can do. I already had confidence in Caleb Jackson and Josh Williams and Caden Durham's. It's easier for a running back as a freshman to come in and play. He's got a lot of speed. Mm-hmm. But Emery, after coming off the ACL, it was just nice to see him being able to do everything uninhibited at this point. And we'll continue to kind of track that as we go through preseason camp. He made a nice catch out of the backfield, made a good cut. And Frank Wilson said that's the matchup we want because he was going up against a smaller corner. Right. Make sure to run him over, and reminding him that kind of thing. And John Emery kind of gave him like a thumbs up or a little like okay signal, like I got it. And so those are some of the other things that stood out. I think also today we've mentioned Sampson's catch. that was a nice developmental moment. You didn't see a lot out of Shelton Sampson this past spring. And Brian Kelly was saying at times how he was going to have to get more physical to be able to use his length downfield. Well, today he did. Michael Johnson, our excellent photographer here at The Advocate, got a great picture. I mean, Shelton Sampson goes way up for this ball, catches it over PJ Woodland, ends up hitting his head and did not play the rest of practice. Brian Kelly said afterward they kind of took him out as a precaution. And so we'll have to see if he's back out there tomorrow. Still at this point, not something that is necessarily of any major concern at the moment. But anyone else who stuck out to you? I mean, there was a lot of guys getting their first practices with LSU today.
Yep. I think Trades Green a little bit. I think I saw a little bit from the tight ends like Kamorian Pipton, sophomore tight ends. We saw LSU try to get them involved a little bit, going up the seam, trying to get them involved in the middle of the field. And I think that's what LSU fans can sort of expect to see a little bit more of this year, because last year, I've mentioned this before on the podcast, they were primarily a one tight end team. They would primarily play 11 personnel, which is one tight end and one back. I think from what we've seen, from what we've heard so far, I think LSU could play a little bit more 12 personnel this year, which is two tight ends, one back. So when you think about the number of tight ends that LSU has, you've got Mason Taylor, you've got Mac Markway, who's a great run blocker, you've got Kamorian Pimpton, who's a super tall, athletic, red zone target, jump ball kind of guy. He can be a weapon if he's developed enough since his freshman year. And then there's Trades Green as well, who 5-star recruit. Went to Zachary, Baton Rouge kid. He can, if he's ready to go, ready to contribute in his freshman year, then he can really add something to the LSU offense. He could be a red zone threat. He could be a third down threat. So I was interested to see. I was keeping an eye on the tight ends, seeing how they were mixed in, how they were rotating around, and I really took away from the first practice. Take it with a grain of salt. But LSU did try to involve the tight ends a little bit, and I think that's one thing that could be different about the offense.
Definitely. I expect Mason Taylor to have a really nice season.
Yeah.
LSU's career, all-time tight end seasons, the best ones in history are Thad Moss in 2019. Richard Dixon put together a bunch, and he's the LSU's all-time career leader in a number of categories by a tight end, including yards. And Mason Taylor's a couple games away from becoming LSU's all-time leader by a tight end in school history in yards and receptions. It's 17 receptions, 191 yards. I think he's going to end up having a lot more than that.
He'll get there.
And I think he'll get there, I don't know, maybe a month and a half, if things go according to plan with him. Everybody's really interested in defensive tackle. Not a lot that you could wholly take away from it on the first day, but there is just at least this. Gio Paez, the Wisconsin transfer, was the starting defensive tackle next to Jacoby and Guillory. Not a shocker there. And then on the second team defense, it was Sean Washington and Kimo Macanioli. And then, we didn't see a whole lot else. I mean, it is, again, they're not in pads yet. But we'll update that position as we go along, because that's one of the other big sort of position battles. And I think particularly with the rotation, how does it shake out? Basically, who's going to contribute? But I get to that to say, this is the first practice we saw of Dominic McKinley. Mm-hmm. He looks the part from a size standpoint. McKinley's up to 316 pounds. He added some weight here in the offseason after enrolling, and he looks like an SEC defensive tackle, when he's standing out there. We'll see as we get further along in camp if he's, a kind of person who can contribute as a freshman, which goes back to sort of one of the themes of the day. Again, lots of young players, and you mentioned this, is that consistency aspect. Brian Kelly said this today. From all those young guys, they need to see consistency like Will Campbell showed his freshman year. Right. Kelly phrased it as, when Will Campbell put in his mouthpiece every day, he was giving you everything single day, and that's why he was so good and able to start right away as a freshman. That's what's going to have to kind of figure out here as we go through the rest of camp. First tomorrow, and then next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all these days coming up here of practice. How are these guys looking as we get further into it is going to be really revealing. I don't think that there was a whole else that we maybe learned from today. Anything else that comes to mind?
No, I mean, that's pretty much it on McKinley. Like you said, he does look the part. At SEC Media Days, Brian Kelly, sort of, when he was asked about the defensive line, he sort of made a point to list off a few guys who could contribute. Deshaun Womack was one who we saw lined up with the first team a lot today. And McKinley was another one too. And he really said, for his size, he's really athletic. And maybe we can see him throughout camp. Maybe he'll mix in with the ones, with the twos a little bit. Maybe he'll rotate in, and then maybe once the pads come on, we can see if he flashes anything, if he beats any LSU's guards or centers, and just see how he looks, because if he can contribute anything right away, then that's obviously a huge boost for the defensive line. But really, that's really about it. That's really all we were looking for, all we saw. If it's first practice, long ways to go, a lot of heat to put up with, lots of sun to put up with, but football is right around the corner. Camp is a grind, but
football is here, man. Not even just around the corner. Real football is around the corner.
Real football is right around the corner. So yeah, it's getting exciting. But it's about a month away. So
won't peg you into any predictions just yet.
No,
won't lock you into anything quite yet. We're gonna probably take a couple of weeks, see how things look, and then maybe give some then. Again, though, LSU has practice coming up. Again, open tomorrow, very briefly. But then everything's going to really ramp up next week. Open practices Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And we're going to have coverage of all of that and more for you over at theadvocate.com. Make sure you like and subscribe to The Advocate, because we're going to have a lot of great coverage all season. For Reed, Darcey over here, and Amelia Cotton behind the glass, I'm Wilson Alexander. Thank you for watching or listening to the LSU Sports Insider. Have a great rest of your day.